just told my neighbor I was here to see the first storyteller. So, I once saw an old man not get hit by a car. It was very exciting. It was Oxford, England, hence I can't give blood, in the 1980s, dreary gray day, and there's this old man crossing the street and this car driving towards him really fast, and suddenly my body tensed, and there was the squeaking of tires and brakes, and the car stopped like that much in front of the old man. And there was nothing wrong. Everything was fine. And then a few moments later, the old man fell over anyway. And when I saw that, I felt my jaws get tense and my forehead furrow. And this wasn't a very strange response because I was 15 and anger was pretty much my standard response to any situation in life. And I was incredibly pissed off at pretty much everything. Like, I was angry at my teachers for teaching me irrelevant information and making me stay after school and fit in this ridiculous system that I was against. I was angry at the police because they kept chasing us away from the square for some reason. I was angry at politicians because of the Cold War and the recession and apartheid and all that shit. I was angry at my parents because parents. And I was just pretty much angry at every single grown-up in this whole godforsaken world. And I would have kept going, except the driver of the car had gotten out and asked me to come and help the old man up. And I was a really pissed off teenager, but I was technically still a child. So begrudgingly, I still had to listen to grown-ups. So I went to the street, and there on the tarmac was this ancient man. Like, he was so wrinkled, it was like he bought his skin 3 sizes too big. And he was dressed in this double-breasted tweed suit with a bow tie. Like, he looked like he'd come out of the last century. And I mean, not the last one, but the one before that, which could explain his, like, car response. And he's, like, got these brown liver spots on his hands and his head. He's bald. He's got these tufts of white hair over ridiculously big ears. And he's looking up at me with these watery gray eyes through these thick horn-rimmed glasses, and he's holding up this trembling hand, and it's just pathetic. So the driver in the car and we help the old man up, and she is really, really upset about the fact that she didn't hit the man with her car or something, and she's really, really worried that he hurt himself in the not accident, and she wants to take him to the hospital. But the old man is like, nah, no, I'm fine. I have a few bruises, perhaps, but I live nearby. I can walk home alone quite well. And my doctor, Dr. Klein, does house visits. It's okay. The moment I hear the words Dr. Klein, I have a brilliant idea. Because you see, Dr. Klein is my mother's boyfriend. And in that moment, I realized that if I walk this old man home, and I wait with him for his doctor, all the grown-ups are going to think very highly of me, which in this moment in my life would benefit me greatly. And I can hitch a ride back with the doctor, save the bus money my mother gave me, and have enough money left over to buy menthol cigarettes. So, even though the old man doesn't want it at all, the driver of the car and I insist, I'm going to walk him home and wait for his doctor. So that's what happens. He puts his arm in mine, and we cross the street and start walking down the side street ridiculously slowly. Like, he's got his hand in the crook of my elbow, and it feels less like I'm walking down the street with an old man and more like I'm dragging one against his will. And it takes us like 15 minutes to walk what I could have done in 4. And the whole time I'm walking like this, I have this niggling feeling like he's doing this on purpose, just to fuck with me. So he introduces himself with a very strong German accent, which I can't do, so it always comes out French for some reason. He introduces himself as Dr. Gerhard Weiler, and he says I can call him Gerhard. And after this ridiculously long walk, we finally arrive at his apartment building. He lives on the ground floor, and it's a very modern building, and by modern I mean 1970s. And he has this open plan apartment with a semi-open kitchen, and through a hallway, I see a bedroom with a single bed, neatly made, and like a study with floor to ceiling, wall to wall bookshelves. And even though the apartment building is modern, it smells and looks like a museum. It has that musty smell of a secondhand bookstore mixed with turpentine and beeswax. And there are like paintings and sketches and aquarelles and like a giant tapestry hanging on the walls. There's statues and stone and ceramics and metal. There's silverware and there's really fancy carved furniture. Louis, I don't know, the guy with a lot of numbers, Louis. Louis the Numbers with the satin covers and golden thread embroidered butterflies and birds. And there's art books open on the coffee table. And there's this big mantelpiece clock that's like tick, tock, tick, tock. So I'm impressed, and I'm walking around, and just like he's calling his doctor, and I'm checking things out, touching stuff that's not mine, going like, oh, that's pretty cool. And as I'm looking around, I noticed this one piece of art on the wall. Do you know this when you recognize something like, I've seen something like this before, like it really looked familiar. So I go up to it, and it's this reddish-brown sketch of a young boy's face with a turban kind of half falling off his head. And as I'm looking to it, Gerhard is now pouring a drink from a bar that he's magically conjured from a giant globe. And without turning around, I hear him say, ah, yes, original chalk study, Rembrandt. Like it's normal to have a fucking Rembrandt hanging in your apartment in Oxford, England. So I turn around to go like, what the fuck? And he's standing there with 2 drinks, and he's, whiskey? I never had whiskey before. Oh, cool. So I take the drink, and I sit down on this very uncomfortable Louis the whatever chairs, and everything about Gerhard's body language, the look on his face, the complete lack of conversation tells me that he does not want me to be there. And the only thing that I can think of doing is just to awkwardly sit there listening to the tick-tock, tick-tock, and pretend that I actually like this smoky drink in my glass, which is, and we just, the time just goes by with this awkwardly sitting there, like tick-tock, 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 until he finally speaks. And he's looking me directly in the eye. And he says, the most frustrating thing about being 85 is that no one listens to one anymore. And I'm like, what? Seriously? That is like exactly the same thing as being 15. Like nobody listens to you. And I've actually stood up to shout this at him. And he can't respond because we hear the doorbell. And then there's a key in the lock, and the door opens, and in comes Dr. Klein, followed by my mother. So Dr. Klein doesn't even take his coat off. He comes straight in, and he starts berating Gerhard like he's some little kid. He's like, how often have we talked about this? You are unsteady on your legs. You can have a drink before bed, but this afternoon drinking has to stop. And my mother is standing in the doorway, looking at me, going, Xina, are you drinking whiskey? And from across the room, I catch Gerhard's eye. And we both suppress a smile as we raise our glasses to each other and take a really, really big sip. And that is the exact moment that one of my best friendships in my whole life was born. And where the story comes to an end today, because the rest is more than I can tell in one night. So, thank you.